Yeah, hey, greetings everybody. This is Wesley Pepper. Welcome to the Art Lexcia podcast. This is episode 228. Yeah. Again, man, I've been getting my numbers mixed up. I'm wrong. I've noticed in a few episodes, but I'm sure you will forgive me for that. It's not a huge train smash, but this is definitely 228. Yeah. Also just on Sun Gallery 360. Just a notice to like people be listening regularly. Um, Very cool. Yeah, we are fixing a few more smaller bugs, but as I mentioned always, I'll put out all those if there's anything major, I'll put it out on my social media platforms. I actually wanted to mention something, but I think let me rather hold back. Anyway, anyway, today we're talking visual art. As you know, that's probably my favorite topic. So I'm a visual artist myself. We're talking to Vivian Kohler. He's in the studio. It's in August House, no?
No, I've left August House 2 years ago. I
Okay,
have a studio that's associated with Gallery Momo at the moment.
okay. Well, firstly, Vivian, good morning. Welcome.
Morning,
Thank you for
morning.
taking the time out. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. I appreciate the invite. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So appreciate you coming through. And let's jump straight into this. Get into the deep side. Uh, like I mentioned, I'm not. Anyway, I wasn't a. I'm not searching for rage bait, but I want to know about the art. We want to know about your background and stuff. So let's just start from the background, man. Can you just give us like an overview? How did you get into visual arts? Where did the journey all start? And we'll take it from there.
Um, something. I don't think I think I started my journey when I was born. As an artist, I often say that some people are born with a silver spoon. I say I was born with a paintbrush. Um, as long as I can remember, I painted. I painted on everything. I painted on my parents' TV at one point.
Ah,
I
I
painted
also did.
on the walls. Then you're an artist.
Yeah.
So so after high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, what I wanted to study. So I studied graphic design because everyone in my class was studying graphic design. But at the end of my second year at Peninsula Technicon back in the day, I realized, crap, I'm not in the right place. And even my lecturers were telling me at that point that maybe I should consider fine art. And the reason why I hadn't initially considered fine art when I was in high school is because it came so naturally to me that I completely overlooked it. To me, it was like breathing. To me, it was like blinking. So I completely overlooked it. I thought it was just this normal thing that everyone could do. Um, but then as I progressed in graphic design, um, at the end of third year graphic design, by that point I had already made up my mind that I need to do something else. I wasn't sure what exactly, but um, we went for job interviews as a third year group. And out of the whole group, I was the one who actually got the job, you know? And I was having nightmares of my first day. I could not see myself sitting in an office in front of a computer screen the whole day. And so they gave me my schedule. They told me when my job starts the first day, and I could not go. I refused. I didn't pitch up.
Wow.
um,
Wow. That's praise.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So after that, I took a year off and I started painting in my bedroom. Um, and to sustain myself, I got various jobs. I sold apples on the side of the road with my grandfather. I worked in construction. Um, just to make ends meet to get by, but also more importantly to buy art materials. you know. Um, and it was during that time while I was in the construction industry, while the guys would have their lunch break, I would just gather scraps, whatever I could from the various construction
Ah,
sites, and I would start
yes,
making art.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
I started making art and painting on those constructions, and then on the weekends I would actually go to Cape Town, and I found this one little gallery. It's no longer there, unfortunately. It was called the Peanut Gallery. I don't know
Yeah.
if you remember it. It
Ah,
was in Church
ah.
Street, tiny little gallery, and I started selling those little constructions there, and that was kind of the spark of it for
Mm,
me, you know.
mm,
And then from there, I studied at Ruth Prowse. Um, I got to second year in Ruth Prowse, and I wasn't able to pay my tuition, so they politely asked me to leave, and I ended up sharing a space at Great Moor with a friend.
mm,
I'd met
mm,
him on a workshop at the Castle of Good Hope, um, and then um, they sort of informally started a studio at the castle. And then I don't think it was even there for 6 months.
mm,
And then the studio manager left, and they asked if anyone what would take over, and I raised my hand with no experience at all, not knowing anything about running the studio, and I became studio manager of the Good Up Art Studios. Um, and then I invited a few more people who actually knew more about running a studio than I did, and we formalized it, actually calling it then the Good Up Art Studio. Um, and through that, I was able to earn a little bit of an income, which afforded me the opportunity to put myself back into my second year and third year at Ruth Price, and actually finish my studies there. Yeah.
interesting. Interesting. I wanna backtrack there a little bit, man. And our background is actually quite similar. Uh, Very similar. I also started off as a graphic studio designer. It wasn't for me. And
Right.
then I could move into, yeah, yeah. To me, the frustration with graphic design was the size of the work. And I'm not good at logos. I find it
Okay.
creatively
Yeah.
restricting. Um, yeah, and like vector based, it wasn't really my thing. And back then, I'm probably showing my age now. Computers, there was still Windows 95, and I think it was still, yeah. Anyway,
Right.
but like another similarity is like drawing on scraps of like you say you're working at a construction site. What images were you painting on there, and why did you choose a subject matter?
I mean, it was still really early days. So when it comes to reference material and images, it was the various people I was learning from.
Mhm,
So the Cubist masters, but then locally it was Willie Bester and Cecil
mm,
Scottness.
mm,
So at that point, it was still quite a mashup of various styles. I hadn't actually found my own style yet or my own direction. So I was still learning through emulation, um, through going to Sang in the company gardens, seeing
mm,
works in Sang, or going to my local library, just gleaning from those library books. Obviously, through my art studies at high school as well.
mm,
Um, so at that point, it was genuinely just a mashup of lots and lots of
uh,
various
uh, uh,
influences. I hadn't really found my focus yet.
uh, uh,
So even things like painting wildlife, zebras, whatever.
uh,
Um, yeah, there wasn't actually any voice yet. There
uh,
wasn't any conceptualization yet. I was still busy on my technique, um,
uh.
and practicing my skills, my hand skills, more than the conceptual skills.
Interesting. Just another point on those artworks. On a scrap. One thing and I'm speaking from experience that is sort of, I guess, drilled into my mind is that you're not restricted just to paper, the size, the medium, um, and it sort of like did it like sort of expand your mind in terms of like what you can do, what you can't do? Because if you go to like a formal studio from the beginning or an art school, there's a sort of a point. You obviously draw on paper. It has to be neat and clean. I remember like when I at art school, they were very strict on like how neat everything had to be, no fingerprints, and I sucked at that. I mean, I don't think you can fail in art school, but like I wasn't scored very highly on that because I could never keep everything neat and clean and crisp. That's why it was, if I could see something, anything lying anywhere, it just made sense to me. I could just pick it up and maybe this looks like this, or maybe it looks like that. I can do this and that. What was your what did that because you mentioned like your I guess your artistic voice wasn't found back then, but were those like the building blocks that eventually led to where you are now?
Um, I my work was neat.
Okay.
I think that came from my 3 years of graphic design. We couldn't get fingerprints on anything, otherwise
Mm,
you could
mm.
fail. So I think
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
already sort of ingrained in me by the time I got to Ruth Prowse. So when I got to Ruth Prowse, what they actually did with me was they tried to break that neatness out of me. Um,
interesting.
you know, they needed me to think as an artist, as a fine artist at that point, and not as a graphic designer. Um, however, graphic design did allow me certain understandings of composition and technicalities like that, which I appreciate. So I look at my practice as a culmination of everything I've learned up to now. I haven't completely discarded my graphic design learnings. I must still employ quite a few of those sort of techniques and just ways of thinking, and then just balanced with sort of more of a fine art approach. Um, yeah, I remember my very first drawing class at Ruth Prowse. They hated the fact that I was cross-hatching because I learned
Okay.
that in graphic design. They
Okay.
com
Yeah, yeah,
they,
yeah, yeah,
they crumpled up my page and threw it away. Say, thou shalt not cross-hatch. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah.
both of those are quite a learning process of learning and unlearning. Um, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. Just a pointer that, I don't necessarily, it's always crazy. It's also probably another criticism I have towards like formal art institutions because I've been involved in many or a few. Um, I don't necessarily think it's a good idea to say you can't do that, you can or can't do that. Different people like different things. Art is subjective, but anyway, I guess,
Well,
yet I get where most people coming from. Yeah,
yeah.
continue.
I personally think that if you are going to study art, you should never study art directly after school because art
Mm,
is about self and you can't study something that you don't understand. So if you don't know who you are or you don't understand who you are, for me, it's pointless going to study art. If I would suggest
good
that
point.
you take a few years off. You find yourself if you're able to travel, do something else. Just find who you are because art is an outflow of the heart, and if you don't understand your own heart or your own self, how are you going to speak eloquently through your practice? So I would genuinely suggest that no one, unless you're one of those forward kids who are a bit ahead of your time, and you've gained access to self sooner than others, then 100% jump into it. But and also art studies are quite expensive, so you don't want
Yeah,
to waste time and money
yeah.
in that sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good point. Yeah, it is. It is pricey, and the return on investment isn't always immediate. And I know a lot of working class families have problems with that, and rightfully so. And interesting point. Like, yeah, 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 yeah. In not straight out of high school, I jumped into straight out of high school, but it took me a while. Uh, it took me a couple of years to sort of find my feet. And let's me run with that. Because anybody, my audience is mostly art, but art lovers and so forth. So people are aware when I talk about your voice, because it applies to to multiple genres as well. What is your main theme? What is your voice about? What is your core about? What do you speak about um through your work?
So, uh, my voice is my theme. There's one constant through all of my work. So when it comes to me doing walkabouts of my exhibitions, I struggle because it's basically the same thing. All the works speak about the same thing. I suppose just from different angles with different vantage points. Um, so my work is about self, but not self as in Vivian, self as in us and what we all go through together as a collective. So I speak about this self through sort of through the medium of a person as example. So um we all go through this life in identical ways, but from different locations. Um, so I've always tried to find ways to speak to everyone across those located positions um, in ways that anyone can understand. So this is also why I use found objects. The found object is something that we all understand. It's something we've all lived with. So for example, something like cardboard or parquet. We've all had parquet in our homes,
Yeah,
or in our grandmother's homes or things like
yeah.
that. So there are certain signifiers or symbolisms that I use to signify something like home, which would be parquet, or liminality or shifting circumstances for me, that would be cardboard. Something that you can't really count on, but we still use it in transition.
Ah,
Um,
interesting.
and then those sort of material elements juxtaposed with the human figure, because that's our first point of reference, right? For everyone, no matter what our background is, no matter what our
Ah,
education level is, it's very important for me that no matter what your background or education level or economic status is, you're able to access understanding within the work. So if people come from academia, there's something for them to access. If people are just a layperson on the street, there's things for them to access as well. So through those media, I speak about past, present, and future. Um, can I show you an example as I speak about my work?
absolutely. I was gonna suggest that when you were done. With just a
Okay.
second, I'm gonna turn off my video so we can have, yeah, so we can just be focused on your work. So I'm still here, of course, but yeah, go ahead.
How do I? Can I turn the screen around or just do this?
Don't you have that
Okay.
thingy? What's that thing that they have? The that which flips the camera on your
Yeah, I
phone.
don't. I had it before we started. I don't see it now for some reason, but it's cool. It's cool. I'll do this
Okay.
if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so
Whatever
this
works.
this is the work I'm busy working on at the moment. It's not finished yet.
Yeah.
Um, so those three figures. Okay, let me start with the materiality in the background.
Yeah.
So those are
Vivian,
road signs
can you just take a step? Sorry, my brother. Can you just take a small step backwards so that the whole artwork is sort of cropped in the screen? Because it's sort
is
of
that
cut off
better?
at the top. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fine.
Is that
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I start with the foundation, the assemblage foundation,
Uh,
with the found objects, gleaned in from the world, where it's had a past life. And
um,
I sort of recontextualize the works, the found objects. Um, the narrative changes once the found objects then encounter each other.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting because they each found object has such a different backstory, you know,
Interesting.
and such a different past life.
Yeah.
And then when they get juxtaposed together like this, some this interesting narrative and
Uh,
play of story starts to happen, which I have no control over. Um,
uh,
but then that allows the viewer, that I was speaking about, that doesn't matter what their background is, to access the word. Like, we all understand road signs,
yeah.
we
Yeah.
all understand what they mean. Um, and then juxtaposed and attached are the three figures. Now, those three figures for me represent past, present, and future.
Yeah.
The top figure would be the future, and
Yeah,
the other
makes
two
sense.
would be the past and the present. Yes,
Makes sense. Yeah.
um, because we all have these hopes and dreams, right? And so that would be the core of my work. It's this,
Interesting.
what I call the search for home, the search for a place called home, and especially as a person of color, a colored male from Cape Town. That is our story. Um, we are sort of this hybridized
Uh,
Aboriginal peoples whose histories have been erased, intentionally so, unfortunately, by our previous regime, which then leaves us in quite a precarious predicament where the human desire is to find meaning in self and to understand self. But when you have a disjointed history as we do, that's really hard to access. It's really hard to deal with. So I use my heritage, the understanding of my heritage in that way, and I apply it to sort of the larger spectrum of humanity. That humanity as a whole is that sort of colored story. Who are we? Who do we want to be? Where do we come from? Who are we meant to be? So that's past, present, and future. Um, so it's this idea of the place called home, and we're all searching for that, and we're all trying to get to that place. Um, that place of stasis, that place of understanding of who we truly are.
sure.
Because internally we all understand our value,
Mm.
but we're not there yet, and that's that future that we're hoping for and we're working toward.
Sure. You said a lot of cool stuff that I wanna follow up on there. The first thing is sort of a point. I totally get the metaphor with the found boards, with relation to the colored or Creole or however you want to put it, culture. The fact that it's found everywhere, it's sort of a shit. What's the word? Sometimes this happens where the word just leaves my mind completely.
Hey,
But like,
happens to me all the time, man.
yeah, but I try to own it, man. I try to not make it awkward. But like I totally get that metaphor. You also mentioned that it has different properties, or I'm sure it also relates like where you picked it up and so forth. Maybe something is at like rain or water or whatever, or some sort of damage. I totally, and in relation with colored people, and actually that leads me to my second point. Check him, man. I've actually interviewed quite a few artists, colored artists from a writing background, from music background, and so forth. And what is consistent through everything, including myself, is that identity is center to all our art. Identity. We all explore identity through multiple. I have a pseudonym where I go through. There's another brother. He's a writer. He has a very similar thing. Some people choose an animal, some object, or something that sort of represents resilience, mixed race, and so forth. Um, and yeah, man, it's really centered to all of our to all of our art, and it's actually quite complicated. It's also a topic that gets a lot of colored people wound up, the right way, sometimes the wrong way, also.
Yeah.
So it's something I actually was very skeptical of like talking, bringing that on the podcast because it evokes so much emotions and it's so polarizing, which is quite testament to why we always use our identity as a center part because it is such a major thing. Can you comment on that?
Yes, I mean that's the epicenter of our agency, right? Um, Also, if you ask any artist about their artwork, they'll actually inevitably tell you about themselves, because that is genuinely the epicenter of our agency, and that is the power of art. Art is agency. Whether we would like to do it consciously or not, art is agency. It's a medium. It's a medium of change, and especially in South Africa, where we can't just sit back and let things happen to us with our historical and political past. We need to be proactive, and also the arts played a key role in the struggle days.
Yeah,
And that legacy is ingrained, it's ingrained in our practice, in the generalized practice of the South African art scene. Um, and also, um, as an artist, whatever we ruminate on comes through in our art, consciously or subconsciously. It's almost like this. It's not something we really have control over, in those terms. Um, what we think, what we think. uh, So the beauty of being an artist is we've got more than one voice. There's the one with a mouth, but there's also the voice with our hand.
interesting point.
So
Mm,
whatever's up here or in here, it's going to come through those various media, through those voices. Um, which is a powerful thing. I mean, I believe that we are born for purpose, and we on this earth for legacy. We're on this earth to make change, you know. So we can't just sit back and not leave anything pertinent behind. Yeah, once we pass.
interesting point, man. Interesting points. Like I mentioned, this thing really upsets. I don't say upsets, but it really stirs up a lot of emotion amongst creative people. And I also believe because we are innately very emotional people. Now you still put this identity thing on there, which is so divisive. Um, here's something that I a sort of a follow up question on that. And this pertains to sales, to money. At the end of the day, we can say or do what we want to do. At the end of the day, you know it needs to sell. There needs to be a market for it. Um, man, I don't know if this is now a controversial thing, but you'll bear with me. I'm not searching for rage bait here. I genuinely want to know your opinion on this. Um, so if I you mentioned earlier on like drawing wildlife and stuff when you find your voice or just normal random stuff, and that makes sense because that's also relatable to a lot of people. I also fun enough did landscapes and stuff, and that was I guess
Yeah, yeah.
successful. But it's very boring. It's not really me, and it's very monotonous. It wasn't me. So in sort of speaking of you, I mean, in drawing out all of this pain, all of this emotion, all of this politics, do you think there's a market for that? That's the first. So it's sort of a double-edged question. And do you think it restricts you creatively? Because once you find once the gallery or the assigned you for those, you know, they expect this type of work, and to constantly there's an artist, and I don't want to go too far off the point, so just please bear with me. There's a poet
Sure.
that whose work I love. He was Miguel Pinheiro. He was a Puerto Rican American, but it was in the 80s in New York. And he was a real piece of shit. He was a junkie. He was an alcoholic. He was all these bad things. But and his plays and poetry was really based on the street scene in New York, but it sort of reflected society as a whole, and his themes and his imagery to me resonated with me, right? And his use of language, or how he manipulated the English language. Um, what he said to a reporter once when she asked like because he had a very famous play about prison life, and I mean that's hardcore. It's you know really hard shit that
Yeah.
happens in prison. And his answer was, and I'm paraphrasing here, is that in order for him to create this type of work, right? He used the metaphor of diving down to the ocean and getting a pearl and then coming up with a pearl. The pearl was the actual art. But his metaphor was every time he's got to dive down, then he eventually began, and diving down means like, he was high and drunk and all these loose things.
I
And he
see.
said like you gotta constantly go. Then eventually find, yo, but I actually like it more down here than I do up there. And what I'm
Mm,
what I'm what I'm trying to get, like every time if you have to dig into deeper in personal pain, identity crisis and so forth, and do that commercially for like 20 or so years, does that impact you? And can you comment on that?
so, I mean, that's a very realistic question. Um, because that's where we live, right?
Yeah,
That's our everyday life.
that's
That's
how
what we
we
have to
get
deal
down.
with. Yeah, exactly. Um, so it is a bit of a double-edged sword. It is a bit of a dichotomy in the arts because on the one hand you've got um your agency, you've got your ways of thinking, and you've got your personal point of view. But at the same time, art is also a business, and as an artist, you are running a business. Um, so it becomes quite a fine line to walk, and you got to ask yourself, right? Why are you making art? Are you making art purely to sell? Because then the politics goes completely out the door. There's no need for politics or your own thinking. You can just do landscapes, sell them very often, make a lot of money, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
The other question is, do you want to say something? Do you want to impact society? And if so, how are you going to do that? Are you going to use your art? Are you going to become an activist um, and make work that doesn't actually sell? Because in that sense, you, you'll have to get a job to
Mm.
support that voice, and support that way of doing things, which also is absolutely nothing wrong with that. So interestingly, along my career, I've had quite a few different jobs um, because with your art career, it takes quite a while for you to get what I call sort of gallery ready, to get your skills up. Um, so you do need a way of sort of sustaining yourself until that point happens. Um, so you need to ask yourself, do you want to be a gallery artist who wants only purely to sell? So it's a it's a really difficult one. Um,
It is.
but the fact remains, you need to be honest with yourself. What do you really want out of art? And if you call yourself an artist, what is it? What is the path that you personally want to take? And the thing about the arts industry is that there's no templates. You need to sort of be a trailblazer and find your own way. Um, we can't really rely on modes of practice that have gone before us. We obviously can take inspiration and we can learn lessons so we don't have to hit our heads in the same way that others have gone. But genuinely, you have to trailblaze your own path. Some have been quite fortunate; they are able to do more political works, or at least openly political works. However, art is like poetry. Art, we are able to cloak cloak our politics in a very beautiful veil. Um, so there are those ways about going about doing things, which I think most artists do. Um, so I think that's also why I approach my work that in the ways that I do. There are those political layers, but I cloak it in an sort of an acceptable or accessible presentation. Um, my understanding, or at least the artists that I've come across, most of them do that.
Mhm.
Um, it's better to use wisdom than a knife. You know, um, in this industry, but not just this industry, also in life, I suppose. Um, yeah, someone else asked me this question, the same question, a few weeks ago, and it's something that I've never actually consciously,
Interesting.
um, it's something I've never consciously did. I've always just made what I
Uh,
want to make.
mm,
I sort of, my studio is a very selfish place. I don't think about the viewer in those instances or those senses. Um, but thankfully, my work has always taken the mode of accessibility. That's
mm,
always been really important to me. So even though the works might be, um, I have to preface this though. I've never been into sort of party politics or societal politics. I'm more into relational politics, and I think that's why my work has been more accessible, because it's about the person. It's not about this political party against the other. It's about the people. I'm more interested in the politics of the people
mm.
and the relational politics. Yeah,
Very insightful, man. Thanks for that. That was pretty insightful. And you also mentioned there that it's a difficult question. Because there's no, and you also mentioned that like everyone is different, and your gallery might like some stuff
100%,
and other people won't. On my side is
100%.
I just found a uh, oh wait, if I should explain that, then we most probably gonna never stop talking. I had to find a balance. I guess I always tell people that I'm a product of my environment. And my environment is incredibly political. Uh, Even I wasn't like a political activist, or I will never belong registered any political party, uh, or speak on behalf of any political party. But yeah, my environment that made me and my influences and so forth. Um, and I just find that fascinating. Just a sort of a closing point. 'Cause I also want to move on to tech. Sort of a closing point on that. I find that fascinating, man. In terms of like what sells and what doesn't, what type of politics does sell and what doesn't sell. And here's a point I want to make here. So I try to consume a lot of art all the time. And I have many reasons for that. And one of the stuff I've noticed in like series, movies, and stuff like that is the art that they use there. For example, like in people's offices, in like if there's a main plot, it's usually in a room, and there'll usually be art in the background, but it's very mundane. It's very stylized. It doesn't create any well, us as looking for it will notice it, but the majority won't. And if you should ask somebody afterwards, they won't really
Yeah,
notice it. And
100%.
that's the point. And that's the point is that I've noticed that that type of thing that because people, if you like this morning when I turned on my phone, all you hear is politics, this Trump bullshit and the fucking oil price and all these things. And sometimes if you want to consume art, you want to escape through that. So you don't necessarily want to
You
be
know,
bombarded with it, like
no problem.
yeah, this is actually the second time this has done that. Ush. Anyway, dick, no. Yeah, but you still with me there?
I'm still here. I'm still here.
All right, all right, all right. So just to close my point, is that and I mean music is also a good example. Like you want to go out, you don't necessarily want to hear about the oil price and this thing with Malema and all these things. You just want to enjoy yourself. So I get that, and as an artist, you sort of need to cater for that or pander to any one of that. And at the end of the day, we need to eat. Um, but just to take it back to the original point we made, as a colored person, identity is at the center, and it's very complicated to sort of speak.
It
on behalf of that
is.
and still be commercially appealing or acceptable. So different, yeah, it's a tough one. That's also why it's interesting to get different people's opinion on that, which I find fascinating. Um, I do want to move into sort of the last part of the thing,
Yeah, yeah,
into
exactly.
right. You want to comment on that?
Yeah,
You
no,
can talk.
I think that's also why I've steered clear from race. Yeah, no, I was just saying, I think that's also why in my career, I've consciously steered clear from race politics
Mm,
because of that heritage, because of those complications. Um, and I speak more in general terms, in terms of
mm.
identity.
And that's like you said, that's perfectly fine. And I mean, your work's also incredibly layered, literally.
Yeah,
And I get the metaphor. It's actually quite loud, to be honest. You don't need somebody else to explain it to you. It's quite loud. But like I mentioned, man, Vivian, I want to get your opinion on technology, man, and just some background there. So I've been asking, so ChatGPT got launched, I think it was 2 years ago. And I've sort of been tracing or following like its impact, what it's been doing, what it's not doing, and I've been asking artists like their opinion on it. I think I mentioned this offline. Is that most what I've noticed is that most artists only really care if it impacts them directly, especially if it impacts their income. And there's one or two. I think there was a guy who does a lot of portraits that I interviewed once. Yeah, obviously that sort of taking a chunk out of his bread. Um, AI has moved at an incredible pace. Um, Post, and I just want to make one point, and then I'll get your opinion. Here's also something else that I've noticed, because I started this podcast during the hard lockdown, during the COVID hard lockdown, and what I've been following since then was that most businesses um, has made some change to sort of for technology, embraced it, whether it be their platform, their apps, websites, and so forth. How they deal with businesses. Some business has downscale employees and automated stuff and so forth and so forth. But the arts has been stubbornly um, nothing much has changed. Nothing. We still expect people to jump into their cars, put petrol in their car, drive to your exhibition, listen to you speak, drink wine, eat finger snacks, listen to music, get back into their car, obviously make a sale or buy something, or don't buy, get back into their car, drive back, and then tweet everything, or take pictures and so on, and post their experiences on social media. Um, I can go on and on and on about different stakeholders, which I think is unnecessary, but that's for another topic. The fact that everything has been so stagnant, but AI hasn't. It gets over 1 billion prompts a day, which is substantial. It's getting smarter. It's if you look at things like logo designing and so forth, like that gig is gone. That that gig is
right.
gone. What's
That's true,
your
man.
what's your take on that? What's your relationship? Are you following it, or does it bother you? Does it not bother you?
AI. Yo, I don't think I've really formulated an opinion on AI too much yet.
Or just the
Obviously,
technology
obviously,
in general, nah? It doesn't have to specifically be artificial intelligence.
I mean, there's various angles you can look at it from, various vantage points you can take. You can take the vantage point of it just being another tool to serve humanity, and it'll be like the new electricity or Wi-Fi that humanity will use, and employ it for its own purposes. And obviously there's the other side as well, where it is like um, like one of the revolutions, the Industrial Revolution, where um, society has to reevaluate its stance and its positioning and its trajectory. Um, so it depends on who you speak to and which sector the person is coming from. Like you said, in terms of industry, industry has embraced it, and it's become like a mechanism, a machine that has take or is taking over certain job allocations in the same way that it did in factories in the Industrial Revolution. Then, of course, there's the other side, which is a lot more fun to think about of the rise of the machine. Um, I think we've been conditioned to think in that
Oh
way.
yeah.
With
Oh
all
yeah.
of the
Hollywood.
movies and
Mm.
TV series. All right, we've been conditioned to think in that way. So that still remains to be seen whether the machines are going to rise or not. But if you look at if you look at the billionaires and what they are planning, making these machines more automated, more human-like, it kind of does seem like we're headed in that way. So there have been many people in that industry who have come up with sort of whistleblowers saying that we need to implement what is it called, safety precautions now already, you know, to to not allow that to happen. But where we are at the moment, in terms of technology, um, when the Industrial Revolution hit, I don't think people were thinking too much past that. Whereas now, people are already thinking about upcoming revolutions past this present one. Um, and the rate of sort of both access to information and knowledge creation it's accelerating. Um, and at the same time, what's accelerating is AI's ability to access knowledge and create its own knowledge. So things are moving at an accelerated speed at the moment, which has never been experienced on this planet before. And to some degree, it's sort of hard to keep up with. What we're talking about today will be old news and
Yeah.
sort of inconsidered next week, even by
Yeah.
next week,
Yeah.
you know. But in terms of the arts, um, I've been speaking to various people in industry, and what they are saying is that it's the artists who are standing in a better position now because we are the creators, and AI and AI is not able to create; it's able to emulate but not create. So I think in terms of art and creativity, should I rather say creativity? I think creativity stands in a much better position than other sort of the job sectors, according to what I've heard.
Um, yeah, man.
Yeah, yeah,
I just want to ask you one more question on that, and we'll sort of wrap up. Um, and just comment on one thing you mentioned there. Yeah, yeah. This I think this is the sixth industrial revolution or seventh. Anyway, my maths is a bit off there, but this is definitely, and this is by far the most I say aggressive, maybe that's the right word. Um,
yeah.
what I'm looking at, and I want to mention, I want to put all my cards on the table here, is that I've got a personal investment in this. It's because we're building an app. I've noticed, and this is engaging not just with artists on the podcast, but just in general, and my experience as working in the arts, is that I'm really frustrated in having to always battle for the same group of people to buy work or to take interest, because that's a really small pool of people. Whereas there's this huge continent of people. There's also a Southeast Asia, Latin America. India, China, Japan. Maybe China's a bit complicated, but Japan. There's a whole
South
there's
Korea.
South Korea. So good point. There's a whole world there, and access is my big thing. Is access is how can we gain more access to work, and to sort of look into the artist's studio, the processes. That's also part of the reason why the podcast is there, so people understand what the artist is thinking and so forth. Um, and you also mentioned a point of, yeah, I can't create work, but, and this is another point, is that it's trained off our work, of our creativity. I mean, we're not being compensated for that. It's like if you're gonna sample a Bob Dylan
Yeah,
song, you can sample it, but you have to pay the artist. AI is not paying us shit, and I do think that is
right.
one way that artists can get paid. You understand? So the technology is gonna use Vivian Kohler's work. You should be. I don't know how, but you should be. I think the same principle applies to sampling, and I see very little
Yeah.
talk amongst like the higher end, people in department of this and department of that, and so forth and so forth. And I do think, and I kind of strategically want to mention that every single week on this platform, and that's just for, so the algorithm can get used to it, and dot, dot, dot. But also just another point on where obviously AI can't, it can take away all the menial jobs. I do think in some ways that artists got a upper hand there, because we can think for ourselves. Somebody who's working in bookkeeping, I actually feel sorry for them, because I think that technology can take away their work like that. I don't still see why people are studying bookkeeping or accounting or stuff like that. Anyway, so I just wanted to get your take on that, man. And like I mentioned, I'm also really invested in building a platform that is like off Silicon Valley, a Tencent in China. Um, I'm Pan Africanist. That's rooted in Africa, and that is centered just around the arts, for arts and artists only. So it's always really interesting to hear how artists are dealing with that. Sort of a closing question on that. I mean, you are signed to Momo. You're doing really great work. Are you, I guess, are you comfortable in working within that space for the next 20 years, 15 years or so? Or are you also looking for new markets, for new platforms to sell, promote your work? Or like I said, were you very comfortable with the current gallery system?
So the way that dude, that's a loaded question, man. My goodness. Um, the thing about the arts is, in the arts, no matter what our position, we always have to be proactive. That's 101 in the art sector. We always have to be proactive. Secondly, we need to understand that we are working from a point where we understand ourselves as your art is yes, it's creative, but it's also a business. So from that sort of understanding, I've never I've never looked at myself as working for the gallery industry. However, the gallery industry is a partner in my business, and the gallery is my business partner. So that's my initial vantage point of understanding this, what I'm doing, my business. It's business partners, my business in partnership with the gallery business. Um, so in terms of what I initially said, being proactive, um, I think we both the gallery and myself as an artist, we need to be proactive, because no no singular model can sustain itself
Good point.
by doing exactly the same thing over and over and over. I mean,
Yeah.
the prime example of that would be Madonna. She's accessed her longevity by reinventing herself over and over and over. Reinventing a voice over and over and over, reinventing a model over and over, reinventing a presentation over and over and over. So the same thing needs to happen with the arts industry, the gallery industry, um, especially now with in recent years the rise of social media. The gallery industry has really changed. Artists are now able to market themselves via social media. They're able to access clients themselves via social media. So now you can imagine the impact of the likes of AI and sort of those sort of platforms, how it will impact the gallery model. I've heard quite a number of galleries themselves tell me that the gallery model, especially in terms of its African location, needs to change. It needs to adapt. It needs to become decolonized. But apart from the politics of the model itself, just the functioning and where it now finds itself within the market, how it has been positioned previously versus where it's positioned now versus where it would like to be positioned in the future. Strategies have to change. Strategies actually are changing. The arts industry, we have to be proactive, man. We can't just wait, you know. But beside that, as an artist, as a creative, because um even the gallery field, besides the institution and besides the business, it's also a really creative space. So and I'm sure you can attest to this as well. The creative mind can't sit still. It doesn't sit still. It's constantly thinking of better ways to function, better ways to do things. So doesn't matter what happens externally. The creative mind attached to the system is always going to look for change and different ways of doing things.
Yeah, thanks for that, Vivian. Let's actually wrap it up there, man. Interesting point. And thanks for taking us through your work.
Technology, dude, we're just talking about technology.
Hey, yeah, talk about that. I think it's also giving me a cue that, that we should that we should wrap up. Besides, it's
No,
almost noon anyway.
it's yeah, no, it's AI. They're catching on to us, dude. Speaking behind the back.
I made a joke about that a few weeks ago as well. It's funny it should come up again. I made a very similar joke. Then
Oh,
listening,
it's
and it's like,
becoming
this one,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's becoming more obvious.
No, we know what this one is up to. So, there's also this funny joke, this meme about Terminator 2 about John Connor looking at us talking about AI. I mean, it's funny, but maybe in 5 years it
Yeah,
won't be
yeah,
so funny. I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah, exactly.
Maybe it will. But
Exactly.
Vivian, let's actually wrap up there, my brother. Man, can you give us your social media handles if people want to view any of your work, websites? Yeah, if people want to contact you, your work, and so forth, how do they go about doing that?
Social media, I've kept it pretty generic across all the platforms. It's just Vivian Kohler Art. That's TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm not on X. I don't like X. I like Twitter.
Oh, same here, same here.
And then and then in
Fuck
terms
Elon
of
Musk.
you know, in terms of accessing my work, you're most welcome to go via Gallery Momo. Yes,
Fantastic, man. And I will add all those handles and website links in the description box below. Once again, man, thank
appreciated.
you very much for coming through, man. Like, I will publish this. So I've been pretty inundated with guests. In fact, I'm doing another one later on today. So I'm previewing a bunch of shows. And some of these stuff are date time sensitive and so forth because there's gigs coming up. Obviously the episode needs to go out before that. So I've actually got 2 episodes to do. Um, one I'll push out early next week. So yours I'll probably do in about a week and a half's time, but I'll be communicating with you regarding that. And I also chop up the episode up into shorts, which is also a very effective way of keeping the content circulating. We'd also ask to another point about the power, which is also something I've spoken about a lot here, is how social media is changing the format of art, like I was doing with music,
Mm.
and TV and movies and series and stuff like that. The format, the shape, the size, the length, and so forth. And that's also something I'm very fascinated about expanding to new markets, but changing how people view it. So you know the so as much as I'm producing content every single week, I'm tracking the data. Data is king. Data is the new oil. And like I'm
You know,
fascinated and
it's so
behind
true.
that. And it's fascinating to see how people interact, how they respond to certain things. But I'll be communicating with you by social media, WhatsApp, sorry, via that. If there's anything cool coming in. But I don't want to take up any of
Nice
your
one.
time. Thanks for coming through, Viv, man. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for showing us your work. Yeah.
No, it was an absolute pleasure. I appreciate the invites and your time as well.
Yeah. Again, I'll be in touch with all of that. And enjoy the rest of your day. Uh,
Thanks, man. You too.
and I'll be in touch. All right, man. Cheers, man.
Bye bye. Later.
Sharp, my bro. Away.
Sweet.